Dear Adobe, I got my iPad Pro last week. You know, the tablet that's roughly the size of an antelope. It's gonna be a few weeks before the fancy pencil arrives, so I thought, hey, this might be a good opportunity to look at some of the apps you guys have. Okay, confession time. I've seen you guys post a lot of stuff about your mobile apps, but I've never paid attention until now. Overall, I've been pretty happy about how everything is working out on the desktop, so I had no reason to. But with this new iPad, I've been thinking about my workflow. How's it going to work? I've been on a Surface Pro for the last year or two. I can sketch and ink and color and vector the whole thing up all on one device. And then I can send it to print or I can save it to web, and I'm using basically two apps to do this, Photoshop and Illustrator. So I was pretty excited to open up the App Store and see there are apps that have the name Illustrator and Photoshop for iOS already available. That's great. In fact, you guys have been really busy. As of right now, you have 31 iOS apps listed on your website. And that's not even counting some of the older retired apps like Adobe Line and Adobe Ideas. That's a lot of apps, so it's probably worth reviewing them. There are two apps for creating portfolios and posting them to Behance. Those are Adobe Portfolio and Creative Portfolio. There's Adobe Shape CC, which lets you take photos and convert them into vector shapes. There's Adobe Voice, which lets you record your voice and then add simple animations and photos. You need photo editing? 3 apps for that. Adobe Photoshop Fix, Adobe Photoshop Mix, Adobe Photoshop Express. What if you want to manage your photos? You've got Adobe Reveal, Adobe Lifecycle Mobile ES, Adobe Lightroom for mobile, an app for publishing stories, an app for creating color palettes, an app for signing documents, an app for making custom brushes, an app for signing documents, another app for signing documents. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is kind of a mess. But where is the mobile version of just Photoshop? There are 4 apps on the App Store that have the name Photoshop in them, but none of them look like the Photoshop that I know. Each one is for a specific individual task. Okay, I'm just gonna refocus this entire conversation. I am talking to Adobe after all. After you guys bought Macromedia like 10 years ago, you stagnated for a while. Now you're experimenting. I mean, really experimenting. And in an incredibly public way. I didn't expect this. Maybe we should all be applauding you. When you look around the App Store, there are dozens of drawing apps out there that are made by upstart developers. You want a painting app? There's dozens of them. Things like Procreate and Inspire Pro. And all these apps mimic the tools that we know and love from Photoshop. Need a vector app? There's Graphic and Inkpad. But there's nothing from Adobe that looks anything like Illustrator. Now there is the one app that bears Illustrator's name. Illustrator Draw is a quirky little drawing app that looks at every tool in its palette as a way to rethink the way that we draw on a tablet. It's so experimental that any tools that you would expect any traditional vector app to have are completely absent. There are no anchor points, there's no pen tool, there's no arrow tool, there's no way to edit a line or a shape once you've placed it on the page. You guys have made a vector app from a parallel universe. As interesting as some of these experiments might be, you leave reviewers like me in kind of a strange place. How do I review something like this? It's like calling an Uber and getting picked up by a helicopter. I have nothing against helicopters, I just didn't expect it. And occasionally it drops you off on the roof of a building. Now, if I want to work on the go, I can create my artwork there and then push it over to the desktop. In theory, that kind of works, but doing one small task on a tablet and then pushing everything off to the desktop is just kind of weird. I'm more likely to reach for something like Procreate or Inkpad just because I'm used to these traditional tools. They feel normal to me. It's natural and just less gimmicky. Unlike Photoshop Sketch, there's features I'm used to in these apps, like layers. Most creative professionals look to your tools to help them improve efficiency, help them speed up. Experimentation slows us down, makes us reflect and think about the way we're creating things. Maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what you're going for. Maybe you guys are challenging the way we make art to make our art better, to make our stuff more creative, and not just give us one more platform we can make art on. I'm a little worried that this is lost on us. Most days I just want to hit my deadline and make something that doesn't look bad. I want my apps to help me make art. The art I've been making for years. The art that your programs are so good at helping me create. These iPad apps just don't feel professional. They're big experiments, big ideas. And I get that, I kind of like that. In fact, nobody has thought as deeply and as vividly about rethinking how we can create art on a touch interface as you guys have. Don't give us 30 apps that each do one thing. Give us one app that does 30 things. We don't need you to be Instagram. We need you to be Adobe. And you guys are amazingly positioned to do something great here. You have a lot of people who have been thinking about this platform in a unique way for a very long time. And you have a lot of resources at your disposal like Typekit and stock photos. And that touch interface you built for Illustrator last year would work perfectly on the iPad. And you have something no other mobile developer in the universe has. You have people paying you $50 a month to use your software. I know a lot of reviewers have complained that they don't have full-blown Photoshop on the iPad. I get that. I don't need full-blown Photoshop on the iPad. But what I do need are better tools, and you guys are best positioned to do that. Signed, Brad.